Hello there, this is James Oscar from the year 1978, and while the tendency of everyone on every side of every debate to violate Godwin's law by describing everyone and everything that they fear and condemn as fascist or Nazi naturally means that we are all reluctant to describe anyone or anything as being fascist, beyond the self-righteous and tribalistic conceit that only the people who I don't like can ever be bad or evil, and therefore, how dare you declare me or the people who I like and support to be fascist, the false premise of all demands that we stop describing Trump or other elected leaders as fascists is based on the ignorantly reductionist assumption that fascism is defined by action or at the very least ideology, that to boil the sentiment down to its lowest common denominator, unless you are building concentration camps and gassing Jews, or at the very least stating unequivocally in interview after interview that you want to do so, then you're not really a fascist, and any accusation that you are is nothing but reactionary hyperbole. However, as I explained in my previous video links down in the underbar explaining what I describe as insecure white boy syndrome, the reason why no one, including professional historians who've devoted their entire careers to understanding fascism, can ever agree on what it actually is that when you strip away the insecurity, fear of change and progress, bitterness, resentment, and impotent rage to reveal the ideological core of fascism, you immediately discover that there isn't one. That when all is said and done, as I also explained in that video, the only reason why the Nazis were so quote-unquote effective and their regime led to the Holocaust, while Italian fascism was always fractured and opportunistic, is that while enough of the German people and those of the conquered nations agreed, no matter how coercedly, that Jews, communists and socialists were the single defining existential threat to their civilization, Italians were always hopelessly divided on what the cause and thus the solution to all of their problems ultimately was. In other words, while the Nazis were able to successfully channel their collective insecure white boy rage into a single concrete goal which they attempted to accomplish through industrialized genocide, it is the insecure white boy rage itself that defines a fascist, regardless of any goal they may or may not devise as an outlet for that rage to make themselves feel better, or whether or not they ever accomplish it. And so bearing that in mind, while the not fascists or Nazis honest of today who insist that Muslim immigration, regardless of whether or not they believe it is orchestrated by the Jews, is the single defining existential threat to our superior white Western civilization and the so-called white race of the modern era, could easily take a similar path to that taken by the Nazis if we are stupid, gullible, or simply scared enough to simply hand power over to them. And while it's definitely true that we cannot and should never describe Trump as being like Hitler, because while Hitler had a single defining ideology, namely his bigoted conceit that race was at the centre of everything, while on the other hand, like Mussolini, hence the nickname Mango Mussolini, Trump is a scatterbrained, incompetent, and power and praise-hungry opportunist with few, if any, ideological absolutes who lurches from one position to the next, from moment to moment, based on nothing but what makes him feel better. That does not mean for a single second that Trump isn't a fascist, bearing in mind that a fascist is nothing but an angry and insecure white boy or one of their token supporters lashing out because we don't get absolutely everything our own way all of the time. Indeed, to quote a line from the book To Fight Against This Age, also links down in the underbar, which I've only just started reading, but has already inspired me to make this video, fascism cannot be fought if we don't recognise that it is nothing more than the stupid, pathetic and frustrated part of ourselves of which we should be ashamed. That ultimately a fascist is merely an angry and insecure white boy or a token supporter who voted for Trump because too many people say happy holidays instead of Merry Christmas, or Hillary called them deplorable. It is the angry and insecure white boy or token supporter who voted leave because they wanted to take back control. It is the angry and insecure white boy or token supporter who sends rape and death threats to feminists who critique their video games and women and all people of colour who were simply cast in a new Star Wars movie. And most importantly of all, it is the angry and insecure white boy or token supporter who is, or at the very least, claims to be an ardent leftist and ally, but warns against the rise of the authoritarian left. Warning that it will strip white boys of their freedom to make bigoted and offensive jokes, condemns all identity politics and wants feminists and marginalised groups to shut the fuck up about how oppressed they are because I'm a nice guy, so how dare you accuse me of being just as bad as the right-wing bigots I condemn, and besides, as a leftist, I'm oppressed too, where? In short, it is every angry and insecure white boy or token supporter who refuses to simply get over the fact that we used to have almost all of the privilege and power, and we still do, but it's not fun anymore. To quote the Italian movie director Federico Fellini, who was for a brief time in his youth a member of the Italian Fascist Youth League, fascism always arises from a provincial spirit, a lack of knowledge of real problems, and people's refusal, through laziness, prejudice, greed, or arrogance, to give their lives deeper meaning. Worse, they boast of their ignorance and pursue success for themselves or their group through bragging, unsubstantiated claims, and the false display of good characteristics instead of drawing from true ability, experience, or cultural reflection. And aside from the mention of good characteristics, depending upon your definition of good, if that isn't an almost picture-perfect description of Mango Mussolini, then to quote Megatron,
"You are either lying or you're stupid! I'm stupid! I'm stupid!"
Thanks for listening, and if you'd like to support my channels, then the link to my new Patreon page is listed down as your underbar, or if a one-off donation rather than a monthly pledge is more suitable for you, then the link to my tip jar, aka my paypal.me page, is also linked below. Just think of it as me holding out my busker's hat at the end of the performance.